Okay. I told you I wasn't going to go into chapter 5 until we finish chapter 6 and then go back to it. But there's one part of chapter 5 I do want to cover, which is the beginning, the first few lines of chapter 5. So again, we're in chapter 5 of Shaar Hayichud Vehaemunah, second volume of Tanya, and we're using the text lessons in Tanya, the more updated text. So we are in the beginning of chapter 5, page 52. So v'hinei al zeh amru Rabbeinu Zechreinu Livracha. Based on what we learned before about tzimtzum, that is what makes it possible for the world to be, on one hand, in existence as a true existence, and on the other hand, totally dependent on Hashem. It has no identity of its own, no substance of its own, in its own right. This is the meaning what Chazal say, B'tchila olav b'machshava, livrei Yisrael mamidas hadin. Initially, Hashem had in mind that he would create the world with the attribute of judgment. Rosh Hanoilam Eskayim, but he saw that if he does that, the world would not be able to last. Shitavoy midas rachman. So he had a sort of partner and associated this with the attribute of rachman, of compassion. What does this mean? What is it talking about? So basically in the Chumash, where it talks about creation, every time it says Hashem's name in the beginning, where it talks about the 10 utterances, Maimoris, it keeps using the name Elokim. Vayomer Elokim Yehi Or. Vayomer Elokim, Hashem said this, Hashem said that, but it's always Elokim. We know the difference between the two names of Elokim and the name Shemavaya is that the Shem Elokim, not even talking about Siddur, just the way it's in Gemara and Midrashim, Rashi and Chumash. Elokim is the attribute of judgment, when Hashem judges the world, and Shemavaya is Hashem's attribute of compassion. Of course, that's consistent with what it says in Chassidus. But being that it says Elokim all the time, every single pasuk, in fact, it says in Gemara, there are 32 times where Hashem's name is mentioned as Elokim, all the way at the end. When it comes to the conclusion of all the 6 days of creation, then it says, on the day that Hashem Elokim created the world, it was both names. First time it uses both names. So therefore, the Gemara says, what does it show? That initially when Hashem created the world, he was planning to create the world with the attribute of din, judgment. But then he saw the world won't be able to handle it, too much judgment. So he said, we also need compassion. And then he added compassion. So there's a number of questions on this medrash. And the first question is, listen, there's two choices to say. One choice is that Hashem initially wanted to create the world with compassion, but he saw that wouldn't work. The way it's explained in a simple way is that there's a mashal given in another medrash where it says that there was a king and he wanted to put liquid in a glass. And he said, if I put in this hot liquid in this glass, the glass will put together. It's a very nice mashal, it's a very cute mashal, but like we said many times, whenever there's a mashal in Gemara or Medrash, it always means that there's tremendous wisdom here, and this wisdom has to be presented in a mashal format. So on the surface, this is one of the questions: why would Hashem initially want to do everything with Gevura? Only because he saw that'll be too much for us to handle. So he decided to also use chesed and kindness and compassion. I would think the opposite. Initially, Hashem wanted to create the world with just compassion and give everybody everything that they want and that they need, and nobody should be lacking in any way, nobody should be judged. But then Hashem saw that if he does that, then the world couldn't last, so he had to do Gevura too, not the other way around. Plus, one of the basic principles of belief is that Hashem is chesed. His essence is kindness. And his essence is to perform kindness and to be loving and kind. So then it makes sense that initially the world should have been wanted to be created with kindness and with havaya and with compassion and not judgment. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just a little confused. I understand you vote.
A little is always
maybe a lot.
Oh, okay.
Initially he wanted to do it with which? Compassion or judgment?
Judgment.
Okay. Because he was afraid that people would.
Right. He need judgment to keep things in place so people shouldn't take advantage. Why are we saying that? The reason why we're saying that because in the Chumash, it's the name of Elohim that's used all along throughout creation. And when does Hashem use the other name in the Chumash? All the way at the end. So that's why the Gemara says initially Hashem wanted to create the world with the attribute of Gevura, and only later he said, so we're asking a question that there are two reasons why this is so difficult to understand. Number one, why wouldn't I think that Hashem would want to create the world first with compassion? Any one of us, if you'd want to do something, first you'd think of compassion towards your child, compassion towards your children in your classroom, compassion towards everybody you're working with. Then you're afraid they might take advantage, so I have to put my foot down, have to use discipline, have to be strong, but not the other way around. And especially when you talk about Hashem, Hashem is infinite chesed, infinite kindness, infinite goodness. That's why we say that even if chas v'shalom something happens, which is the opposite, that it's really a chesed in disguise, and it's really something good, because there's nothing that's chas v'shalom evil or mean that comes from Hashem. So why would Hashem, who's the epitome of goodness and kindness and compassion, want to create the world with judgment?
The same question.
You have the same question?
No, those two questions are the same, right?
They're yes and no, because the first question is just based on the fact, why would there be a reason to start with judgment? There's a reason for both.
So you need the keli before you can perceive that, or
Wait a second, you're fine. We're talking about down to earth judgment and kindness. So the first question is, I'm talking about now on the simple level that judgment means judgment, judging people that if you do this wrong, you get this punishment. You do that wrong, you're not going to get food. If you do this wrong, you'll be lacking in this area, in that area, that kind of judgment. And kindness is the opposite, to be generous and to be overlooking and to just give without any limit and without any judgment, without any calculations. So I'm saying initially, why would I think that Hashem would want to do judgment in general? Why would that be the first thing sort of on someone's mind? And the second question is, especially when you think of the fact that Hashem's whole essence is chesed, and not only that, which is maybe a third point, and it says that Hashem created the world because he was looking where he can express his chesed. So how does it make sense that he wants to create the world with judgment? Right. Yeah. Wait a second. You want to say something? You want to continue?
So have we said yet?
No, I didn't answer the question yet.
Okay. And then the other thing, and I know I'm picking on words, but with compassion, you were saying compassion, kindness. But from my understanding, compassion would be Tifereth, would be the blending.
Yeah, but generally we'll come at the same, the idea of not being judgmental and not being disciplined.
So more meaning just.
Right. Giving, yeah. But when you understand this, from a Hasidic perspective, so chesed doesn't just mean giving. And gura doesn't just mean judgment, mean holding back and judging and punishing, but basically chesed means revealing godliness, and gura means concealing godliness. We understand it that way, then it all fits in. Initially, what does Hashem want? He wanted a world that is the kind of world like our world, which is a Gashmizik world, a world where godliness is concealed, because he wanted to make a dwelling place in the lower world. So therefore, the initial plan would have been a world of concealment. That's what it's all about. But if it be a world of concealment, in other words, concealment in a much stronger way, then how could we develop love for Hashem, fear of Hashem, true emunah of Hashem? With so much concealment, we'd never be able to get there. So Hashem also has to reveal His light. It can't be pure concealment and then say, go ahead, turn this into a godly world. Because if it's a pure concealment, we'd have no way of making it into a godly world. We'd have no way of feeling godliness. So Hashem had to also bring light into the picture.
So he created with the combination or Hesed or without?
Combination, yeah.
A combination.
He made it in a way that a blend of chesed and gvura. There's revealed godliness and hidden godliness. Where's the hidden? We know. You go look outside, you see the hidden. Where's the revealed godliness? So that's the next line. Da'ainu, his galus alakus. This is the godliness that's revealed. Aydei tzadikim, through the tzadikim. Ba'isei sameivsan shabbatayra. And the miracles that are found in the Torah, which means when you look at the miracles that are found in the Torah, and the miracles that all the tzaddikim have performed throughout all the ages, these miracles, this is godliness revealed. This is Hashem's attribute of chesed. And that enables us to be able to overcome the concealment and bring godliness into this world. I'm taking it for granted, but I just want to spell out, even though we use these words, Hashem initially wanted this, and then he decided that. So it's a metaphoric way of speaking, but chas v'shalom, to think that Hashem had a plan, and then he thought about it again and said, no, not a good plan, I'll do it differently. Hashem is not a human, and he doesn't make any mistakes. His plan initially was always the perfect plan. It just means that in essence, Hashem would have wanted to create the world with pure gevura, so the world would be a real tachtainim, the lowest place that can exist, and to bring godliness into this world. That would have been the original. That should have been the original plan. In actuality, Hashem did it the other way around, and made this merger of chesed and gevura. And the reason is because it would be, when it says if there would be just chesed, then the world would be able to exist, because people would do averos. What it means on a different level is, if it would be just godliness revealed, it wouldn't be the Gashmizik world that we're talking about.
It'd be the opposite. People would have no free choice. How would they even do averos?
Exactly. So they would mean the opposite of what the Medrash says.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was all Hesed.
Right. That's something else we'll have to figure out. But that's what it means. If it would be just godliness revealed, then it wouldn't be this. It would be like a world of angels. It wouldn't be this Gashmizik world that we know. And if it would be a world of only gevura, concealment, then we wouldn't be able to bring godliness in a revealed way in this world. So therefore, Hashem created both, which means that in a sense, the gevura and its, like I said to you the other day, that I'm preparing to give over an explanation that everyone gave, which is very, very deep and very complex. And even here, it's printed up in a few pages, maybe 10 pages or more. So we'll try to give it over briefly. But it's all revolves around this subject, that even though Tzimtzum is the opposite of Hashem revealing His light, but really, in essence, they have one purpose and they're really one. Because without the Tzimtzum, there couldn't be the light revealed. And if the light revealed alone wouldn't work, you need the Tzimtzum too. You need both. And now we're going to stop here before we go to the next piece about Moshe Rabbeinu. Oh, we should really see. I should say a few more lines. What?
Okay. When Mashiach comes, it's only gonna be no more Gevura, or it's still gonna be Gevura, but in a different way.
There will be Gvura, but the Gvura will be the fact that we'll still be human beings and still be a physical world. But in this, but in this physical world, the way we know it, godliness will be revealed. Don't worry, we don't have to wait so long. We'll soon be able to understand. Yeah.
How can we say it's the opposite though of the midrash? Like that when it's all chesed, it actually would be no aviras. Because it would be all life.
Yeah, but again, it's not about Averis when you go from this, when you look at it from this end, it's not about Averis, it's just whether it would be a physical world or it would be a spiritual world. Whether it would be a world like angels, where godliness is totally revealed. The whole purpose, dir b'tachtenim, the definition of tachtenim is not that it's the lowest world in space. It's the lowest world in terms of how godliness is revealed. So if it would be Gvura alone, it would be lower than it's even today. It would be lower than it is today. And the problem then would be that we couldn't connect to Hashem. We couldn't bring godliness into such a world because it would be so concealed. And the other way, it doesn't mean, so it's not the issue of doing Averis or doing mitzvahs. It's about how much godliness I can bring into this world.
Just in the context of the mushal, like with the cold water. That's a midrash?
That's a midrash, sure.
How would it apply there?
So what I'm saying is if it would be cold, it would be dirty, meaning it would be a very low world. And a world where you can't bring dirty doesn't mean Averis. That's a simple shot.
Oh,
This means it would be a physical world, then you wouldn't be able to transform it into spirituality because it's so concealed. And the other one that the Keli would break, it means it wouldn't be able to be a world the way we know it. It would be a different world. It would be a spiritual world. We do have to learn a few more lines. And that is, let's go to page 54. So you see here, by the way, that the whole purpose of miracles, the miracles in the Torah that are recorded and the miracles that were performed by tzaddikim throughout all the generations, it wasn't just to get people excited and do something interesting. The purpose of a miracle is a way of revealing godliness in this world. That means that there's a godly light that breaks through the curtain, breaks through the concealment, and godliness is revealed. And this is what it says in the Zohar. Le'ela, b'sitra de Kedusha, up there in the realm of Kedusha, is Yamina, is Smerla. There's both. There's Chesed and there's Gvura. Which means that they're both Midas Alakus, they're both attributes of Hashem, and they're both L'mayla Maseichel and Avrayim Asagos, and they're above our comprehension. We can understand how it is because Chesed and Gvura seem to be two opposites. One is revealing, one is concealing, but in essence, they both come from Hashem. Like we learned at the end of that chapter, they both come from the Kalim, which comes from the Oisius, which comes from the five Gvuras, and it goes up all the way to Atik. The main point of all these lines is to bring out that Chesed and Gvura both originate in Hashem himself, in the essence of Hashem, and that's where they both come from. Because Shteyem, Hemidus Alakus Lamayla, they're both attributes of Hashem, and they're both, in a way, here to do the same thing, except outwardly they look like they're opposites. And that's what's going to lead us into chapter 6. So I'm going to chapter 6, page 76, the beginning of chapter 6. Shem Elokim, the name Elokim, who Shem Midas Agvura V'Tzimtzum. This is the name of Hashem that performs tzimtzum, concealment. That's why the gematria of Shem Elokim is 86, which is the same gematria. The word hateva means nature. In other words, the laws of nature. Because what is nature? Nature conceals the godly light, which gives life to this world and creates this world. Nature makes it appear it's as if the world is not being run by anybody or anything, but it's coming, everything's happening just by itself. It is some sort of a system called nature, and that's responsible why things are happening. And being that we learned what he said initially, the mashal, the sun and the cover to the sun, that the cover is like a filter, which filters that the light of the sun shouldn't be so intense. So page 77, Shem Elokim Zeh, this name Elokim, which is Tzimtzum, Umogem V'Nateg L'Shem Havaya. It is a shield and a sheath for the name Havaya, which means that it causes that the light that comes to Shem Havaya should be concealed unlimited. Lahalim Ho'er B'Achayis, Hanimshim Hashem Havaya Mahaber Marin Liyesh. Its purpose is to conceal that light and to create a world Mi'ayin Liyesh. What does it mean? That the light shouldn't be totally revealed, and then the creation would become batul. So what do we understand from this? Let's learn one more piece, page 78. So that's where now we can understand that the Gevura and the Tzimtzum, who gam ken chesed shalom banabay. This is actually part of the chesed with which Hashem created the world. In other words, the tzimtzum is part of the chesed. By the fact that Hashem gives us His light in a limited way, that's chesed. Because if it wasn't a limited way, then this world never could have been created and couldn't be in existence. So even though if you would look at them independently, say, oh, this is revealing and this is concealing, but the purpose of that is that the world should exist. So they're both working in harmony. They're both working together for the same purpose. It should be able to a world exist that appears to be independent. So just like you were saying that if a mother is feeding an infant, she makes sure to take a very small piece of the food that she's giving. She doesn't feed him an entire banana. She gives him a few teaspoons. So even though it looks like she's withholding food, she's not really withholding. This is the chesed. If she'd give him the kind of a meal like an adult eats, Gatz v'shalom, who knows what would happen to this child. So she's withholding it and not giving it, but that's the chesed. So this is a very important rule to remember, that when you have to define something, you don't define it by what it looks like, you define it by what its purpose is and what its function is. Again, there are a lot of examples of what that means, but just whatever came to my head this second is, if someone is approaching an area that he wants to go into this area, and he comes right in front of the area and finds a wall. Let's imagine it's a war, there's a general in an army. It actually is such a story with David HaMelech, so let's use that story as an example. David HaMelech sent a general to conquer a certain city, came to the city, there was a huge wall around the city, and there was no way they can get in. So what did he do? He backed up, I don't know how many feet or how many yards, and they took a tree, a very strong tree, very high tree, and they bent it down to the ground. And then this general sat down on the tree while the other soldiers were holding it down. And after he was securely on the tree, they let go. They let go. He went flying in the air, and he went flying over the wall, and he got into the city. And it's a long story what happened after that, because when he fell, he was unconscious, but eventually he got in, and eventually they conquered the city. So somebody would be watching this. What would they say? That is, oh, we're watching. He's retreating. He was by the wall. He saw he can't make it. and he walked back. That means that he's giving up and he's retreating. He wasn't really retreating. He was going to do something, a process, which is going to help him get into the city, not run away from the city. Or if you look at the tree, you would look like, what are they doing with this tree? I guess they want to break it. They want to bring it down. No, actually, they wanted to bring it up. But they wanted to bring it up with such force that they can't bring it up with such force unless you bring it down. If it would climb up on the tree, he wouldn't be able to jump. That wouldn't help him. Imagine this tree would be standing there. He'll climb up to the top. Now what? Nothing. Pull it back a little bit. Also nothing. He won't go to. The only way to get him so high and so far that it can actually be, ejected to the other side of the wall is only if you bring it down all the way to the bottom. So bringing down to the bottom is not really bringing it down, it's bringing it up. And walking back from the wall is not really walking back, it's really going forward, but in a different way. So the way to define things, not about what it looks like just technically to the eye, what's the purpose? What's the point? So now we're knowing that the purpose of Gevurah is Chesed. Chesed and Gevurah have one purpose, and the purpose is to allow the world to exist as an independent, to perceive itself as independent, so Hashem could fulfill the purpose of making a world dir b'tachtein. That's what he's saying here. That the Tzimtzum is also Chesed. So when it says that the world was created with Chesed, there's a pasuk, Olam Chesed Yibana. And that's why I asked the question before. That's not my question, by the way, it's from my Marim. Why does it say the world is created with Chesed? So why would Hashem use the attribute of judgment? And the answer is, in this case, in this context, the Tzimtzum is Chesed. So Chesed is Chesed and Tzimtzum is Chesed, which means they both have one goal and one purpose. And this is called Gvura Hakula b'Chesed. Gvura, which is included in Chesed. So this is the first point that he's explaining here. Yeah.
I understand in human terms how we would have to bend down before we jump, but Hashem could make Gvura Chesed, Chesed Vura. You know what I'm saying? Where it's doesn't have to be.
This question comes in many forms and many shapes.
I know.
But the answer is the same answer. The answer is true, but in context of the infrastructure that Hashem created, a universe with laws and world and laws of nature and spheres, in that, this is the rule. This is the way it works.
Okay.
In other words, if somebody would be standing in front of a tree, it wouldn't bend the tree, and it would nevertheless eject this person all the way to the other side, that would be a miracle. It's not Teva. What you're describing, it would be a miracle, not Teva.
The whole thing is not Teva.
What whole thing?
Hashem tzimtzuming himself is a miracle.
I know, but that's the creation of the world. That's the miracle of creation. And after that, everything is following a certain pattern. Listen, the fact that the sun goes up and slows down is also a miracle. The Baal Shem Tov says all the things that are happening naturally are miracles. But just because it happens every day and every second of the day, we see it all the time, so we call it nature. But really, everything is a miracle. What does it mean it's a miracle? Everything is happening only because of Hashem. But Hashem created the world that things should happen by following a certain pattern and a certain way. And based on those rules, this and this can't happen. Yeah.
Just to follow up, I'm thinking, by giving us, Hashem doesn't have to make rules, but without rules, it would be much harder for us to choose Hashem because everything would be changing. So by having rules, by having nature, by having a structure, we can kind of get a bearing, and then we're able to have a choice where things are changing constantly. There were no rules, which could be.
I think it's much deeper than that. If there wouldn't be any rules, it wouldn't be the Gashmic world that we're talking about.
But it could be.
Of course Hashem could do it, right?
How would it not be? How would it not be without rules? Because it would be like chaos. It would be like jungle. It would be, jungle has rules too, but.
No, in other words, it would be, I'm saying the opposite. It would be like a place where everything can happen anytime. And Hashem is revealed in a way. So that means if somebody has a problem with money, says a pasuk Tehillim, and a bag with money comes out on the table. Oh, amazing. The person's in jail, says another pasuk Tehillim, the doors open up, the guards run away, and he goes out. And if somebody is not well, he says another pasuk Tehillim, and he gets out of bed and goes back to work. That would be the world without rules.
Or if he was concealing himself, like it's all Gevurah. He was revealing himself.
That's the opposite, that you
Right.
don't see any connection to anything spiritual. That's why we say miracles are revealing godliness.
Can you have Gevurah without Chesed? There's nothing to conceal.
Gvura without chesed would mean, well, there can be gvura without chesed because, right, the gvura means concealing something, right? Vinay 80, page 80. Miskalus Hamidus. From the fact that we see how the midas blend together and work together, even though they're on the surface opposites, this helps us see more openly and more explicitly the Iyu v'gameo chad shehem yidesa. The Zohar says Hashem and his midas are one. Being that Hashem's attributes are one with Hashem himself, therefore, that's why they unite with each other and they contain each other within themselves. Because Hashem is all unity, Agdus. So therefore, Chesed is one with Gvura and Gvura is one with Chesed. And this is what it says in the famous Zohar, which is called Pasach Eliyahu. This is the part that's in the Siddur. And it's said every Friday before Mincha and Shabbos. Unto the Kashalan, you're the one that connects them, and you're the one that unites them. Other than you, besides you, there's nothing else that has unity to it. Everything else is their separateness. And Hashem is oneness and unity. So now we can understand the pasuk that we started the whole sefer with. This is what it means when it says in the beginning, you should take to heart that Havaya is Elokim. So what does that mean? On the surface, we said very strange words. God is God. What does that mean? It means the two names, page 81, the two names, the name Havaya and the name Elokim, even though outwardly they look like they're going in opposite directions, Shagam, Shem Elokim, also the name Elokim, Hamid Samson, that its function is to conceal and to contract the light. It's chesed just like the name Havaya. They're both going in the same direction, even though it looks like they're going in opposite directions. And the reason is because Hashem's attributes and Hashem are one. And it says, Hu Ishma Echad, Hashem and his name is one. What does that mean, his name? Shemidesav, his attributes, that's his names. Each name represents a different attribute. So therefore, what we're saying is that Hashem and his attributes are one, and the attributes with each other are one. So don't look at Chesed and Gvura as two separate things, they're actually one. Mela Teda, so you will know. Shebashamayim Mimal, that in the heavens above, Alois Mitachas, Einai, there's nothing else besides Hashem. Which means, if we were to say that Gevurah is something which sort of blocks Hashem's light, and it opposes Hashem's light, in reality, that means there are things in this world that really, truly block Hashem's light.
It's like
What?
It's like covering it like that.
Yeah.
Did you understand what I just said?
Yeah.
Like, oh God, that was awesome.
You learned Vidai Tamaska. Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to explain in a second what that hand motion meant. First, he says something else. The name Elokim is only a concealment for us, not for Hashem. Because he and Hashem and his attributes are one. So it's brought down in a Maimer, a principle, with the words are in Hebrew, in Chassidus, Ein Etzem Master Al Etzem, which is the essence can't conceal on its essence, which means something very simple. I can't conceal things from myself. The definition of concealment means there's something that blocks me, something that stops me, something that doesn't allow me to go further. And there's an interesting mashal given to this, not a mashal, but it's actually a deeper meaning to a halacha. there's the halacha. Of course, a man must have his head covered. So his head covered must be there if he's making a bracha, if he goes into a shul, he goes into the Beis Hamikdash. In those cases, it's actually an aveira, it's a prohibition to go without. How about if you're not davening, you're not learning, you're not going into the Beis Hamikdash, you're not going into a shul? Other than that, there wasn't that kind of an obligation. Only later it became more of an obligation at all times, because wearing something, a covering on the head, it brings fear of God. It reminds us that Hashem is above me. So therefore, it's something which we need all the time. And years ago, when people are on a higher level, they didn't need it all the time. What happens if a person's yarmulke, there's a strong wind and it gets blown away? And that's supposed to walk 4 cubits without a yarmulke.
Oh, you can't.
Only boys, not girls. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Right. So the halacha is that you could use your hand, put it on your head, and walk.
The halacha says you can do that?
Yeah.
Oh.
However, if you want to make a bracha, in other words, that is okay because that's not as severe. That's an additional thing. But making a bracha or going into a shul, that's why they use, because they're making a bracha, they need to use a piece of cloth, not their hand. Why not their hand? So the answer is because you can't cover up on yourself. So I remember we had a teacher, he used to say, what do you mean you can't cover up yourself? I put my hand on my head and it's raining. Will that spot get wet or not? So it is covering myself.
But your hand's still.
What?
Then your hand is wet.
Right, my hand, but not my head. But it means it's a good covering. So what does it mean I can be a covering for myself? I could be.
But you're still getting wet.
Okay, but not my head. I'm not worried about my hand. But my head, I'm worried about my hair, what's going to happen with it. So, so what he explained is very simple. We're not talking about covering in just the literal sense, there's something covering. Let's stop and think for a second. What's the purpose of having a yarmulke on my head? The purpose is to acknowledge there's something higher than me. And my head, which is the highest part of me, stops over here. On top of that, there's something else. That's why the word yarmulke comes from the word yirei melokim, fear of God. In Hebrew, they say kippah, but throughout the years, traditionally, it was called a yarmulke. It means yirei melokim, it brings fear of God. So, what brings fear of God? The fact that there's something above me, right? But if my hand is above me, there's nothing above me, it's still me. So when we talk about the word concealment, it's not covering in a technical sense. It means it blocks me, it stops me. I don't extend that far. So if we talk, I cannot block myself, by definition, it's a contradiction of terms. If it's me, then I can't hide myself from myself. Not because I can't pretend that I know something. It means I am who I am. Nothing could block me if it's me doing it. So in a sense, being that Shem Havaya, the name Elokim is Hashem. The name Elokim is Hashem. The name Havaya is Hashem. So therefore the Elokim, the concealment, is not a true concealment. It doesn't really block Hashem. Hashem is in the tzimtzum just like he's in the chesed. Is that too confusing for so early in the morning? No. I don't think you got it.
Me? No, I'm thinking.
I'll give you a simpler mashal. If a teacher gives a mashal because the concept is too deep for the students, right? So he gives a mashal, and the mashal is more simple, and that the student could understand. Later, as he grows up, he'll look into the mashal and see more depth there. So the mashal conceals the real depth of the concept, right? Does it conceal it for the teacher also, or only for the student? What? Only the student. The teacher doesn't conceal it from the teacher. He sees in the mashal all the details of the concept, which he knows. So what's saying is that tzimtzum is only the way we perceive it, but the way Hashem perceives it, tzimtzum and chesed and gur, it's all one. It's all coming from him, and one doesn't block the other. Okay, we'll stop here. And they said Rabbi Ozdaba is not coming today, so I had to really scramble what to do. So I decided to make life easier. I planned on Monday to talk about Lag BaOmer. Instead of doing it Monday, we'll do it today.
You're gonna teach?
I'm going to teach. Okay.